All right, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of the Gitlit podcast. Today, what we'll be focusing on is something that is pretty important, and it's managing expectations. This is around the success for a small team. Really, this is geared towards most of my experience, which has been small team in a startup. That's whether you're CTO, senior software engineer, or maybe just a lead engineer or manager. Um, I've had my fair shares of definite failure in managing expectations, whether it's in delivery of code or just relationships, businesses. And I think this is such a core point to having a successful team, having a successful startup. And, much of this can be attributed to, the company as you grow and, learning to handle things and expectations early on in a company, and you are a successful business startup that really begin to scale. All this is, a lot of this is groundwork that will help you in the long run. So, managing expectations in a small startup as an engineering lead is crucial. And that is to ensure that smooth operations, um, are running and maintaining team morale. Um, and so there's 5 different points that I want to focus in and dive into. Um, and yeah, so let's go in. So the first point that I want to talk about is around just clear communications, goals, and priorities. A lot of this is, we might think is, yeah, this is pretty obvious, um, but a lot of this ends up getting lost in those initial go arounds. Or as things keep on growing or moving along, after think of as engineering, you have sprints, you have cycles, um, and as your team is building, coding, a lot of times that you get so focused, and a lot of times the communication and goals priorities can just get lost in the weeds, and your head is in the box, and you cannot see outside of this box, and so for a team, or as you as an individual who is in a leadership position, uh, this regular communicating the company's vision, the goals and priorities to the team is essential to the success. So this is, ensuring that everyone understands, um, how their work is aligning with the larger objectives of the startup, of the business. So if you're leading this team, 3 engineers or so, that you're regularly communicating that, hey, we need to accomplish these goals within this sprint, this next sprint, this quarter, and because that is going to um, get us to X, Y, and Z, and the long end of the year we're trying to be here. And so I think that's where you're having calm retros, or even just once a month syncs with what's the status, how much code have we moved, what are some more celebrations and wins, and another thing that I think is just crucial with helping with clear communication, goals, and priority setting is um, you're using regular meetings and updates to keep everyone informed. So uh, think stand-ups. Stand-ups is pretty adopted. Most people, every day they have, let's call it a 9 a.m. stand-up, 15 minutes. It's for each individual team, go down the list. I worked on this yesterday, working on this today, and, do I have any blockers, yes or no? And I think those are so crucial to be very attentive and to make sure that you don't just get stuck in the daily stand up. A lot of people just do it, they get used to it, and then they don't really extract anything from it. I've I could point the finger at myself where you kind of get so used to, um, saying the same thing or just going through your list, but no one actually takes any actions out of the stand-ups. And I think this is part of that clear communication that we want to be diligent. If someone says they're blocked on something, or hey, I'm waiting for this person to get a PR done or to finish up, you know, business requirements, well, that's a blocker, and we need to stay on top of that. Because if it's 2 days, 3 days that come down the line, that affects the whole chain of operations here, and so then we're impacting expectations on that. So, yeah. Point number 2 is a fun one. It's realistic timelines and deliverables. So this is probably has been one of my biggest struggles in just my startup career, engineering career, is creating realistic timelines and deliverables. I mean, this right here is what makes or breaks so many people. Um, if you don't have realistic timelines, and there's two sides to this. There's the side of it that says realistic in the sense that nowadays product is shipped within 3 to 6 months. That's how quickly things are built now. And what I mean by product, I mean we have a startup that called $1 million. They need to be in market within 3 to 6 months from now. There is no such thing as a year later. Things move so rapid. So there's this aspect of like, if someone says, "Oh, it'll take us," big picture, it'll take us 2 years, or a year and a half, or even a year to get this MVP out. That doesn't exist anymore. That is not. People will say, "Nope, no thanks," and they're going to go somewhere else because someone's going to say they can get it done, an MVP done, MMP is the new term, within 3 to 6 months. And that is realistic as far as like an initial, you keep things small, scope small, your business. I think it's very rare do you see, unless you're doing R&D, very complex, call it robotics or, some type of AI that is truly AI and just requires so much effort and research. But besides the point, realistic timelines, I think is one. If you're in the initial phase of building a product, an application or a platform, it's giving that a timeline that works for the business, but then also it's a realistic timeline for not making you look like you can't keep your end of the delivery. So it's a double-edged sword, because you can say, hey, I'll deliver this in 3 to 6 months. Well, what happens when 3 months comes on and you're not done? And you said it will take me 3 months. Well, then you're in a lot of trouble, because you had an expectation for a total time project, and this is where those deliverables start coming in. And so really setting realistic deadlines, this manages teams' workload to prevent burnout, really. And it also creates transparency about what can be achieved within a given timeline. And so, even some of that can be made up. And so you also want to account for buffer room, and part of that takes experience, knowing delivering, but also it takes managing those timelines and deliverables and really being attentive, especially when you're in a time crunch, or especially when you have investors who need a product, you have business that needs a product by this date, because so much is reliant on this realistic time frame and delivery for what is being sold, what is being invested in. And if that doesn't happen, you let a lot of people down. And I've been on that where I've let a lot of people down before. And that's some of the hardest things, because, as an engineer, as a builder, you love building products and you want to build it and you have good intentions. But unless you're clear about what's realistic and what isn't, and what can be delivered, um, it can just affect so much. And so I think like part of the realistic timelines um, is it's okay to, as you're in it, as you're analyzing, as you're monitoring, as you're having those daily communications and goals, if you're seeing things start to miss, you need to be proactive because people can work with that. And I think if you stay on top of that, that that helps. And as a startup, no, nothing is sure. You know, there's, you know, what is it? 1 out of 10 startups even, you know, get past a pre-seed stage of raising capital. And so, um, we're working against a lot of statistics, and part of that is just being able to be nimble and be able to move. And so, like, if you are in charge of a product, in charge of delivering, people can work with that. Because we'll figure out how to change. Business will figure out how to realign. As long as everyone's on the same page, everything's open, everything's transparent. Um, that's just that will help so much. And um, I think another critical part is to don't just do it yourself, but encourage the team to provide input on timelines to ensure they are feasible and to foster, this sense of ownership with the team, especially as a young company, five engineers, whatnot. More than likely, they have a stake in the company, some equity, and everyone cares. Everyone is trying to strive towards this end result, and so foster that environment where everyone is a part of that. And I think that's so important. So, a lot could be said there. But on the point 3 here, it's is kind of this whole picture of managing the expectations. Another key point is this flexible and adaptive planning. And I talked about it a little bit with that flexible timelines and deliverables, but I think ensuring or emphasizing the importance of flexibility and adaptability in a startup environment. So plans need to be changed, and they need to be changed rapidly based on market feedback or new opportunities. And sometimes that is some of the most frustrating parts of a startup, and even for me personally, because you have this awesome idea, you vetted it, it sounds so good, you get it out there, and no one even touches it. You went through all this effort and this market research, and you had those 10 people that say, yeah, I'm going to sign up. But then when they get it, they're like, nope, I don't want to use this. And so you got to move fast. And so with these realistic timelines and deliverables, that plays into having an environment that is flexible and movable. So it's making sure that the engineers, though they have ownership, they also have ownership to being able to change and adapt and provide that feedback back. So you can work with, whether it's your business, you're the CTO, whatnot, to work with the appropriate parties, business, to make adaptation from there. And foster that culture where changes are viewed as opportunities rather than setbacks. Because one of the things, and I see this a lot with engineering teams, and this was even a problem for my own startups. You work on a product task, and the engineers, and they get it done. They showcase it, do a demo. Your customers are starting to use it, and they're very proud of that. But then all of a sudden, requirements change. Business needs to go a different direction. You tell them that hey guys, we need to start working on this new opportunity, we're going to scrap this. Well, they to them it's a sense of just ownership where they were really proud of this, and now they feel like it was a waste. And so depending on that environment you have, a lot of times devs can really get not hurt, but morale can get can fall a bit because they feel like they're never building anything that's useful or meaningful, and they feel like their sense of ownership is gone because what they built is gone. And so, I think being able to manage that, and initially when engineers are onboarded in the environment they're in, is just really important to foster that culture where, you are seeing opportunities as um, uh, changes as opportunities versus setbacks. So the other item that I think is important, another key point here, is regular feedback and performance reviews. And, so we are managing expectations, we're putting clear goals, we are being flexible and adapted in our planning. But I think another important element to this holistic picture of managing expectations is having regular feedback and performance reviews. So it's more so as a way to monitor, and this helps with making decisions and with planning and where you're going. And so implementing a system for regular feedback and performance reviews is really important to help team members understand how they are doing and where they can improve. And this kind of comes into that fostering of a culture where changes are viewed as opportunities. And really, in some teams, this doesn't work because, and what I mean by that is, some startups there is no one to give a performance review or or feedback. But I feel like that can be done with part of the startup team, part of the co-founder team. If it's call three of you, you have a CTO, CEO, and another co-founder, who's the CEO, call it. And so this could also be applied to you having just checks on each other. And so I think this can be applied with that in many different ways, not just don't think just a corporate ladder here of trying to do regular feedback and improvements, but I think this can be applied to just the leadership team as well, and how you organize things. Like, are we actually being adaptive, and are we holding each other accountable on that? So with that, is you want to provide constructive feedback and recognize achievements to motivate and engage the team. One thing that I love when startups do is they have their, maybe once a quarter, call it, get together. And they focus on, what did they do this quarter? How much money did they bring in, or how much projected revenue did they get in? How much product was built? Do some demos. How many customers were serviced? And so all those numbers, as no matter how little they are, show progress. And that's something you should be giving investors weekly, but also your team being able to recognize and have insight into that. Especially, I love it when teams do sales, like announcements. Hey guys, we just landed a potential contract of, call it 100,000. And when the whole company can see that, whether you're 10 or 100, that really motivates. And it really is, I think, helps build the sense of ownership, because you're seeing achievement. And really, the next point here that is final but important as a key value here is the transparent problem solving and decision making. So in a startup, and even as a founder, being transparent is so key. And some people will say that's not. So there's two sides of the coins here of being transparent. Some people will say, don't be transparent because you don't want to make the team scared. Like, oh, are we going to lose our job? Well, if you're in a startup, you already knew that, hey, more likely you're going to fail. So I hope you're bringing people who aren't looking for that stable 9 to 5, because you're not going to get that. But being transparent can also just be a positive. And what I mean by that is something that I personally always have done is, I want to be honest. I want to be transparent about how much money we have, how much runway, what challenges are we having? Are we not having any sales this month, and why? And I think when you involve the team, no matter if they're relevant or not, in these small settings, 5-10 people, it helps build trust and encourages innovative solutions and suggestions that you might have not even thought about. I've had some of the best ideas come from engineering to business and business engineering, through just a team get together, talk about some of the challenges we're having about, maybe users aren't engaging. And you would be amazed at what people think of. And so that's just, I think being transparent really outweighs the negatives that some might say, because trust is everything. And, I've spent a lot of time in Japan, and if you have no trust, you have no market. So, but I also see that in value in the company culture you want to build. Um, but the other item to this is decision making comes from clearly, you're explaining the rationale behind decisions, especially when they're impacting your engineering, your team's work, your changes in priorities. And so, I think being able to talk about these decisions and have transparency where people can give you live feedback, just builds this environment of trust and collaboration. And all of that will play into your deliveries and your plans and your timelines, because if people feel they're comfortable sharing challenges because you're sharing challenges and they know that there's decisions that will be made, you're creating this ecosystem that moves and people are going to raise their voice quicker. And that's one thing that I've seen with that. And so, conclusively, these points to me help in creating a positive and productive environment where teams, your team, your family feel valued, understood, and really aligned with a startup's mission. And, so really managing expectations in a small startup especially is crucial. And ensuring smooth operations and maintaining that team morale is just a winning factor that I think that everyone should consider. It's not easy. No one, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But I think that if you can learn to manage expectations and deliver behind those, really it's just about delivery. And if you manage that well, I think that sets you up for not just leadership, not just a business, but really many areas in life, because things will go smoother. But yeah, thanks again though. Appreciate you guys tuning in here, and I, hope you enjoyed and learned something. Really, my goal is to share the tales of success, failures, and tips to help other tech founders on this journey of building a startup. And, if you have any tips or questions and you wish to know more, please reach out to me, Twitter, LinkedIn. Go ahead and share this, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.